Are you having trouble finding the plant that's just right for you? Let me point you in the direction of the Arrowhead. This is the most versatile plant in my greenhouse. It has a growth shape that will complement any container, whether you want it dangling out of a hanging basket or filling in a huge pot or even climbing up a trellis. This plant can do it. It also adapts to every level of indirect light in your home, which means you can put it almost anywhere in your home or in your office. And finally, the leaves on this plant can develop spontaneous mutations so that the new leaves coming on the plant can be so very different and unique that it's something to look forward to every time a new leaf pops out. If you're shopping for an Arrowhead, you want to pick a healthy one. And to do that, you want to look at the leaves of the plant. You want to pick a plant that has colorful, vibrant leaves that don't have any spots on them and that are not wilting. If there's a variegation in the leaves, you want to see that that variegation is consistent over the whole plant. You wouldn't want to see part of the plant be variegated in color and then the other part be different, because that can happen sometimes. You want to look for stems that are strong and firm and hold the leaf upright. You don't want to see any mushiness or spotting on the leaves. And while you're looking at those stems, look for new growth, because a healthy plant is going to have a lot of new leaves coming on at the base of the plant, and you want to see that new growth on a plant that you choose for your own. If you can slip the pot off of the plant and look at the roots, it's a good idea to do that. And you want to see white, firm roots. If the roots are brown or if they're looking mushy, that's not a plant that you want to choose. And the last thing you want to think about is pests. The pests that are going to bother this plant are aphids and thrips and mealybugs, and those can all be found on the underside of the leaf. So check that out before you buy your plant. When you get your plant home, you're going to want to take a look at the pot that it's in and how that plant is growing in that pot, because Arrowhead plants like to fill it up. They like for their roots to be just a little bit tight in that pot, and that's when it's going to be the happiest. But it will get root bound very quickly. So you might want to go ahead and bump it up into the next size pot before you place it in your home. And the next thing you want to do is look at the coloration of the leaves that you have, because Arrowhead plant will have spontaneous mutations in their leaves that are based on light and on age. So if you look at your leaves and you notice on this Bronze Maria that it has a nice bronze color with a nice deep rich green color with a red vein going through it, when you place your plant in your home based on that light, look at the coloration over the next week or two and see how it adapts and changes based on light. If you get it into the perfect light condition, it will keep this coloration for a good long while, but as the plant ages, it will change over time. So that's something that you can expect with this plant. It's one of the most interesting things about this plant. So for this Bronze Maria, if I turn it around, you can actually see the plant is aging, it's producing runners, it's moving outside of the pot, looking for growing space, and that's what they do when they run out of space in the pot. And if you look at the leaves on the runners, they're a little bit different. They've aged and they're starting to mutate, and the way that works is in the node. The node at the joint of each stem has the ability to mutate, to have a spontaneous genetic mutation so that it changes the color and the shape of the leaf over time. Now, if you see a variation that you like this one's very interesting. This is a very unique coloration that I haven't seen on any of the ones that I found in the stores. And if I take a cutting, if I propagate right here where the nodes are active, there are already some adventitious roots starting to grow. if I take my cutting there and I put it in the dirt, I'm going to have a new plant that looks like this rather than like my Bronze Maria. That's how this plant produces so many different varieties, because as they mutate, you can take a genetic cutting, which is a genetic clone of the mutation, and have a brand new plant that might be something brand new that no one else has seen before. This plant was a cream Allusion Syngonium, and it's one of my oldest Arrowhead plants. I've had it for years and years and years. I can't even remember how long I've had it. And if you look at the leaves on this plant, they're all quite different. Some of them are green and white, streaked like the white butterfly Syngonium. And these leaves take on a sort of a lime green, golden green color with a pink vein like the golden Allusion. And if you turn toward the middle, if you look at these in the middle, here again, we have a brand new variation that I've never actually seen on a Syngonium anywhere. It's a gorgeous pink vein that kind of fades out into this lime green color. And it is just a spontaneous genetic mutation. And these mutations are based on the amount of sunlight that they receive and on the age of the plant. So when you have it in particular spots in your home, whether it's high light or low light, this plant will adapt and have spontaneous mutations right there while you're looking at it. This is the Pink Perfection, and it's one of my newest Arrowhead plants, and you notice the gorgeous pink color. That's what it's famous for, having this great leaf that is entirely pink. But as it ages, the leaves start to mutate into this green variation. And you can see on this runner there are different levels of green on it, and as the runner extends and it ages, these leaves will be entirely green and white with no pink at all. And so it's a genetic mutation based on the age of the plant. The other thing that happens with age is the shape of the leaf changes. So you notice this one has that distinctive arrowhead shape, but the one right next to it is beginning to develop lobes. This one has actually 3 different lobes on it. And the same thing happens as it produces the runners. The arrowhead shape is completely gone, and a completely mature plant can have up to 11 lobes on the leaves. So these genetic mutations that happen over time and happen in various levels of sunlight, it just makes this plant such an interesting plant to have, to watch it as it grows and changes over time, and to capture some of those changes as you propagate your plant. Now, the Pink Perfection is not protected by patent. I can propagate all I want. The same with the Cream Allusion and with the Bronze Maria. They are plants that we can propagate as these new genetic changes come over time. And so, one more detail. If you buy the Pink Perfection and you want it to stay pink for as long as it possibly can, the trick is to find the right sunlight. So you may need to move it to 2 or 3 different places in your house to find out where it maintains the best pink color in terms of the amount of sunlight it's getting. Because here's a great example. This side was getting sun from the window, and the back side was getting a little bit more shade, not in the window, and you can see very clearly how the color changes based on the amount of sunlight that it gets. Now, it can thrive in any kind of indirect light, including very low light. But just be aware that the amount of sunlight will affect the color of the plant, the shape of the plant, the growth of the plant, and even sometimes the shape of the leaves on the plant. And all of these things that happen to this plant just make it be such a wonderful plant to have in your home, because you can enjoy it day after day, week after week, and watch all of the interesting things that happen. The best way to know how to take care of a plant is to think about how it grows in the native environment. And so this is native to Central America and South America, and it thrives in the tropical rainforest or in the subtropical areas. In the tropical areas, it's growing in a rainforest, in the shade of the trees, in very rich soil where it rains frequently and it's very humid. But in those subtropic areas, it has a period of warm, wet weather followed by a period of cool, dry weather. So that tells us the reason why this plant can be so adaptable in terms of being wet or being dry. It thrives in both of those conditions. The common factor in those climate areas is shade. This plant will not tolerate direct sunlight, but it does thrive in bright, indirect sunlight and can take very low levels of sunlight and still thrive. In the natural environment, they grow in dense clumps and they put out runners that grow adventitious roots. And those are roots that grow in the air, and they crawl across the ground with those roots spreading as they go. But those roots also allow them to climb up into trees, and those plants that climb into trees can thrive up in the trees without a connection to the ground. They can thrive as an epiphyte in the trees. So understanding that native environment tells us that this plant is going to thrive in warm conditions. It grows in zones 10 through 12 outside very easily. But the low temperature is about 50 degrees. If it gets colder than that, you're going to want to bring it inside. And on the hot end, about 90 degrees is what the information says, but I can tell you in Texas, mine get to about 103 sometimes. And as long as they're in full shade, they have been able to thrive even at that hot temperature. In terms of watering, they are very flexible, but consider that they usually have a warm, wet season followed by a cool, dry season. And what that tells you is during the growing season, while it's warm, it's going to want a little bit more moisture. And in the wintertime, when it cools off and things slow down, you can water it a little bit less. But know that it is flexible. It's rare for this plant to actually get root rot from being overwatered. And it can also tolerate extended periods of drought. And it can take that in stride in most cases. In the rainforest, it lives in that rich, nutrient-filled soil, which tells us that it loves lots of nutrients in the soil. As a houseplant, you can fertilize it once a month and it is going to bush out and grow in a really nice way. But keep in mind, it is a fast grower. And if you want it to slow down and stay in one pot and not have a lot of vigorous growth outside that pot, you can back off on the fertilizer and that will slow down the growth of the plant. So it depends on your situation and how you want the plant to grow in that situation. If you have a runner on the edge of your plant, you can actually divide out that part of the plant, or the easier thing to do would be to prune it close to the ground, but you don't want to take off all the leaves. You can take off most of them and leave a few. And when you look at the stem, you can easily see the adventitious root nodes coming on. Some of them have actually started to grow. And these adventitious roots can be 3 or 4 or 5 inches long. And in the native environment, it supports that limb as it spreads out looking for space to grow. But in terms of propagating the plant, if you cut off right below each little node, you can actually put this in water or put it in soil and it will actually grow a new plant. So if you're going to propagate this cutting, what you need is a leaf node and a leaf on the stem. So if I cut it there, I actually have 2 leaves and a leaf node, and I can just insert it into the soil and start watering it. And if you keep it in the shade and you keep it moist, within a couple of weeks, it's going to start growing a new plant, a new root. Now this adventitious root is a really great one. It shows you how quickly it can grow. And all it takes is giving it a little bit of soil, and that is just going to take off and grow. In terms of soil for the arrowhead plant, it is not picky. You can use a routine potting soil or a potting mix and it's going to adapt to it very well. The arrowhead plant is amazingly versatile and incredibly easy to grow, as long as you just keep a few key things in mind. You can get it on a watering schedule that works for you, And if you want it to grow quickly, you can add fertilizer once a month during that warm, wet season. And if you want it to slow down, just back off on that fertilizer. And this plant, it's one of my favorites just because it is so versatile. So I hope I've encouraged you to try something new. Go look for a great arrowhead plant and look at all of the ways that you can grow this in your home. If you have questions, drop a comment below. If you like it, let us know. If you haven't subscribed, you need to do that. And I'll see you next time on The Handcrafted Garden.